Hey YouTube, it is Andy here, coming at you with another 100 Ornithopters Cube update video, and also a review of the deck lists from Boston Cube Party, at least the people that did upload deck lists to Heat Your Network. Shout out to you if you did. We'll get to the Cube update in a second. It's a pretty minor update, but with one card I'm really excited about. Let's go over here and just talk about these deck lists. So, for those that don't know, at this Cube event, you had the option of uploading a deck list to the website that does all of the matchmaking and pairings. And for those that did, I have pulled those deck lists out and put them in a little slideshow for us to review. I didn't include any photos of people that didn't build their deck. There's a lot of, pool photos in there, and I've learned from looking at these over many events that I am not capable of figuring out what a player would have done in terms of main decking in that seat. So I don't make any assumptions about that, but if there's a deck photo uploaded, that's going to be here. So thank you if you uploaded a deck photo. Also, if you are watching this and one of these is your decks, I'm sorry if I say something that upsets you. I'm just looking at these decks and trying to figure out how they function, and you're probably a better Magic player than me, if that's any consolation. So let's dive in real quick and talk about these 3-0 deck lists, because there was definitely a pattern. First deck list, this is actually friend of the show, Mora. Friend of me, Mora. And this is a really cool Kark Clan Ironworks Phyrexian Altar combo deck. So KCI Phyrexian Altar to sacrifice the whole board and make a bunch of mana, and then Second Sunrise, Faith's Reward, Yawgmoth's Will to get all that stuff back. And the win condition is just Mishra's Command. Mishra's Command and only Mishra's Command. There is no other way in this pool to even kill your opponent. I guess you could put a counter on a Ornithopter with Revitalizing Repast and attack many times. Now, this is an Echoing Boon deck. We will talk a lot about Echoing Boon here in these 3-0 deck lists. You'll see it was quite a pattern. I've said before, and I will still stand by the fact that I think Echoing Boon is the most powerful card in the cube, but I think it's cool, and we're going to talk about how it's cool here, because this list has exactly 2 cards, Revitalizing Repast and Mishra's Command, that can target an Ornithopter that proc Echoing Boon. I don't know how highly Mora took Echoing Boon. It could have been early in Pack 1, and then she ended up drafting a combo deck that couldn't really abuse it. It could have been late if people were not respecting it and passing it along, even though she only has 2 spells that trigger from it. But it was still doing work here from talking to Mora and from watching at least one of her matches, because you double up with the Mishra's Command means you don't have to generate quite as much mana to go off and combo, which is kind of nice. Or you can put 2 Lethal Thopters in play if your opponent has a couple blockers, though Mishra's Command also clears blockers. So really cool to see this list. I love this list. This is exactly the kind of deck I want to be successful here. Mishra's Command is a card I put in the cube specifically as a card that I wanted people to be able to use as a win condition in a deck like this. One of these cards that is very condensed. It's both interaction if you need interaction, but it's also a win condition if you can generate arbitrary amounts of mana, which this deck absolutely can. Really cool to see Fecundity especially abused here, just drawing your entire deck with Fecundity. Skull Clamp is messed up with Altar or Kark Clan Ironworks. You just get to draw most of your deck. Palm the Forbidden, always doing its best work here. Yeah, great deck. Love to see it. And one example of how Echoing Boon can be used very minimally. Just to pair with Mishra's Command, basically. I'm not even sure if Revitalizing Repast was ever cast or if it was just played as a land. So that's that. Next up is one of the... Okay, this is actually the deck list I know the least about. I didn't get to talk to the player that drafted this deck list, so let's kind of walk through it. We do have Echoing Boon showing up here again, and this deck, I believe, has more ways to target creatures, for sure. So we still have Mishra's Command. We also have Fists of Flame. We also have Scale Up. We also have Trash the Town. Bless me. We also have Appeal to Authority. We also have Strength of the Harvest. That doesn't work. We have Revitalizing Repast again, and then here in this, that's Mox Opal in this glare. Colossus Hammer. Over here we have Storm Beacon Blade, Scapegoat, and Battle for Gobakhan, and Twisted Image. Twisted Image also triggers with Echoing Boon. So this feels like a just Echoing Boon aggro deck, basically. We have a lot of things to trigger it. What was it? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spells that trigger Echoing Boon, and some of them are very potent. The doubling Scale Up or doubling Fists of Flame is a huge deal. Doubling Trash the Town, depending on the modes you paid, is a huge deal. Yeah, in terms of interaction, this deck has just Aura Shards and Battle for Gobakhan, right? Oh, it's got Meltdown here also to clean up things, depending on how the board is sequenced. So minimal interaction, but it's the perfect example of a good aggro deck, and then it has a lot of win conditions, a lot of cards that actually threaten their opponent, and also a lot of card advantage. We see Showdown of the Scalds here. We see Rite of Harmony here. We see Thunder of Unity as a way to draw cards. We see... I guess that's kind of it. So not a ton of card advantage, but enough to sort of get by. This deck does look like it's playing all 5 colors. I mean, I have to assume from this picture that the Twisted Image was in fact main decked. We have, how many blue sources do we have? None in the lands. So the blue sources are purely just coming from the Mox Opal, the Song of Freylies, and the Curse of Opulence, which is actually fine. That's quite... Oh, and not Earthcraft, sorry. So it'd just be Curse of Opulence, Song of Freylies, and Mox Opal, which is, I mean, I think it's fine. That's probably enough sources to play. Twisted Image really good with Echoing Boon, so probably worth it. I'm really excited to see Stormbeacon Blade here. That's a card that I just added before this. If you watched a previous video, you'll know that I added that to the cube with the idea of aggressive decks playing it, and so I'm excited to see that here. Yeah, just kind of a bomb-heavy aggro deck with definitely abusing Echoing Boon. So compared to our previous deck list, where Echoing Boon is probably not necessary, but a nice to have, I would imagine prioritized pretty lowly in the draft unless it was taken early speculatively. Here we see Echoing Boon almost maximized. Like, this is one of the sort of more committal Echoing Boon deck lists available, and a deck list that might struggle without Echoing Boon, but we'll never know. All right, next up, these last 2 deck lists are quite similar, and we saw Jeskai Ascendancy combo get 2 of the 3-0s at Boston Cube Party, which I wonder if my sort of previous video talking about this, and I talked about it on the podcast a little bit, if I incidentally put my thumb on the scales a little bit and encourage people to draft this deck. But I think it's really sick. I love this deck, and if it ends up being one of the best decks in the cube, I'm not going to complain. So the combo, for those that don't know, Jeskai Ascendancy, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you untap all creatures you control, and you draw and discard a card. And all creatures you control get +1/+1. So basically, kind of gives effectively prowess, untaps all your creatures, and loots. You combine that with an Ornithopter, or ideally a couple Ornithopters, and Banishing Knack or Retraction Helix. These are identical spells. They're an instant that gives target creature you control an ability until end of turn. That ability is tap to return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So you give one of your Ornithopters that ability, and then you target any 0-mana non-creature artifact. This deck, or non-creature permanent rather, this deck has Chrome Mox and Paradise Mantle. I've seen it done with Welding Jar. You can do it with the other Mox, obviously Mox Opal. But you target Paradise Mantle or Chrome Mox, and you just put it back in your hand, cast it again. That's going to untap the creature you targeted the Retraction Helix with, and you get to do that repeatedly over and over again. And every time you do it, your Ornithopters are getting bigger, and you are ripping through your deck, and you just do that until you have lethal, basically. It also will draw you into any interaction you need. You know, this particular deck has Berserk to give trample, so if there's a bunch of chump blockers, you can make your team huge and then Berserk them to death. This is also an Echoing Boon deck. This, in terms of ways to abuse Echoing Boon, Banishing Knack and Retraction Helix are, I think, premier options here, because that spell is copied, so you can essentially turn it into 1-mana, instant speed, bounce 2 non-land permanents of your choice if you have 2 Ornithopters in play, which is definitely worth it. It also has Berserk. Berserk is messed up with Echoing Boon, but the only way to pump Ornithopters in this entire list, I believe... Oh, no, we also have a Angel Fire Ignition. So I'd be curious to know if the Angel Fire Ignition thing happened, but it seems like Berserk is really here just to provide trample for the Jeskai Ascendancy combo, which I have historically not felt I needed, but cool to have, I guess. This cube also has some redundancy for the untap combo with both Paradox Engine and Intruder Alarm. So this deck is going to untap its stuff very consistently between those 3 cards. And then it has additional win conditions here in Lightning Volley, which gives all of your creatures tap this creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and also Quicksilver Dagger, which also gives the tap to deal damage to target creature or player. Just player Quicksilver Dagger, but that one also draws a card. So yeah, this deck kind of really committed all in on this particular combo. And interaction-wise, we have a Repeal, really good with Echoing Boon. We have a Vandal Blast. We have the Retraction Helix and Banishing Knack we already talked about. We have a Twisted Image, also really good with Echoing Boon. But that's all pretty soft interaction, and your opponent's going to get to do their thing for the most part. You might be able to delay them a little bit or, mess up their sequencing, but you're not going to be able to stop your opponent's plan with this deck for the most part. Maybe Vandal Blast could do it if your opponent had no protection or no recursion. Most of this is just aiming to be the better combo deck at the table, and here it is in the 3-0 bracket, just demonstrating that at least at this table it was. Also want to mention that this is one of the first times I've seen Song of Creation show up in a 3-0 deck list. This card is notorious for people killing themselves with it because it is not a May. Whenever you cast a spell or play a land, you do draw 2 cards. It's a very fast way to root through your entire deck, and also a quick way to kill yourself if you're not careful. So that is cool to see that actually abused here too. Really sick deck as well. And yeah, I'm excited to see Quicksilver Dagger and Lightning Volley, which are relatively recent additions, actually doing their job here, and excited to see more people pulling off the Jeskai Ascendancy combo. I actually also really like the Berserk Splash here for Echoing Boon. And again, this is a really good Echoing Boon list, but completely different than the other Echoing Boon list we just saw, because this one's all about being proactive, all about being aggressive. This one is about supporting a combo and doubling up on your interaction, like Banishing Knack, Repeal, Retraction Helix, Twisted Image. All those things. And obviously, you do have to target your own Ornithopter with the Repeal, the Twisted Image, in order to get a copy to target your opponent's stuff. But usually, you can do that for value, right? Like, Twisted Image will draw you 2 cards if you want. Kill your own Ornithopter, kill one of your opponents, draw 2. Quite good. Repeal will bounce anything and also return one of your own Ornithopters, so you can then proc Intruder Alarm again, or proc Song of Creation again, or proc Paradox Engine again, whatever. So, you can oftentimes make that good on both sides of the battlefield for you. So yeah, this is part of why I am okay with these. 3 of the 4 3-0 deck lists I have are all Echoing Boon decks, but they're all quite different, and that's part of why I'm still okay with this card here being a huge power outlier, because you can use it in different ways. You can use it to make your win condition a little more sturdy, you can use it to commit a whole aggro deck to it, and you can use it to sort of provide a lot of depth and interaction to a combo deck, basically. The last deck list here is not an Echoing Boon deck, but it is a Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck. This one was drafted by friend of the show, Ollie. Shout out to Ollie. Also has exactly Chrome Mox and Paradise Mantle. Also has both Retraction Helix and Banishing Knack. Also has Jeskai Ascendancy. Also has Lightning Volley and Quicksilver Dagger and Paradox Engine. But Ollie is pairing it with Earthcraft, Wheel of Fortune, Paradoxical Outcome, and Light and Tutor to go get the Jeskai Ascendancy, and Elven Chorus. Elven Chorus and Earthcraft with Jeskai Ascendancy also just kind of makes an arbitrary amount of mana, because you can just tap your creatures to make a bunch of mana. Every time you cast a spell, you're untapping them, so you can turn all of your spells into ramp and looting, which can usually find you a way to win. So this deck shows that this archetype does not need Echoing Boon certainly to win, and this would be a much worse Echoing Boon deck because it would only have Retraction Helix and Banishing Knack to trigger it, so I'm not even sure Ollie would have taken Echoing Boon if it had come to them. So yeah, I love seeing this deck too. I think this deck is sick for similar reasons to the previous deck. We see even less interaction here, I guess. This is really kind of all in on the combo, but it's also faster and more explosive. The Earthcraft, Elven Chorus can definitely just win the turn you play them. Rite of Harmony and Wheel of Fortune and Paradoxical Outcome are better card draw engines than we saw in any of the cards in the previous deck. This one's best card draw engines are really just the Ascendancy itself or Song of Creation. Song of Creation being quite hard to cast. So this deck is even more sort of lightning fast combo. And with the combination of Paradise Mantle and Chrome Mox to give some turn 0 ramp or turn 1 ramp, potential to kill very, very quickly in this deck. I mean, you could go turn 1, a couple Ornithopters, Paradise Mantle, Springleaf Drum, turn 2, Earthcraft, go off. Not even Earthcraft necessarily. Turn 2 right. I don't know. There's a lot of lines here where this deck can be really explosive. So, yeah. I have no issues with any of these 3-0 deck lists. As a cube designer sitting here looking at these, I'm not like thinking there's a problem. I don't think Jeskai Ascendancy combo is a problem. I think it requires a lot of pieces and is kind of clunky, and I'm just glad to see when people pull it off. I'm not concerned about Echoing Boon showing up in 3 of the 4 deck lists here because it is being used so differently. It is not sort of on rails, and that's just one of the cards I'm comfortable being one of the best cards in the cube because of the cool things it enables, and we see some of that cool stuff on display here for sure. So, yeah. Not particularly surprised. I guess I'm a little surprised to see 2 Jeskai Ascendancy combo lists. That's very cool, and not expected. But yeah, cool 3-0 lists. Let's look at the 2-1 lists. I've looked less in depth at these, so you're going to be kind of getting my real-time reaction to this as we go through here. This one appears to be we got Colossus Hammer, Forge Anew combo, along with some other powerful equipment like Cranial Plating, the Aether Spark, Ember Cleave to put on your creatures. So this is an aggro deck that's sort of going big, it appears, though it does have a ton of Ornithopters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 Ornithopters. This is quite a few. That's a lot. And Showdown of the Skalds, Experimental Frenzy to draw cards along with the Aether Spark and Wheel of Fortune. And then the rest is kind of just win conditions. I guess Mystic Forge also draws a ton of cards. So win conditions, really just Hammer, Plating, Obelisk, Embercleave kind of counts, but you have to have one of the other things online for it to really matter. Aether Spark, Tempered Steel, and maybe a flipped Invasion of Gobakhan. Showdown of the Scald is also a real win condition too. So yeah, just a tidy little sort of red-white aggro deck that is showing off how you can pair, I don't know, a lot of different win conditions and card advantage engines that overlap. I mean, I've talked before about how I try to make cards that do a lot of things in this cube, and the Aether Spark and Showdown of the Scalds and Invasion of Gobakhan are all cards that do both, right? They will both interact with your opponent and present a win condition in the case of Invasion, or in the case of the Aether Spark and Experimental Frenzy, they will draw cards and also, the Aether Spark and Showdown of the Scalds will draw cards and also pressure your opponent and count as a win condition. So yeah, tidy little red-white aggro deck. Not mad about that. Love seeing Hammer in decks that are performing well. I think it has potential here. This is not the best Hammer deck. I mean, Forge Anew is the only way to equip it, and you got to find the Forge Anew, which you have no way to do. You got no tutors for it. You just got to find it via Wheel of Fortune and Experimental Frenzy and Mystic Forge and Showdown of the Scalds. It is nice that the Forge Anew doesn't require that you have played the Forge Anew before you cast the Colossus Hammer, which is what is required of Sigardas Aid. So you can just play out the Hammer for 1 mana, and then your opponent has to sort of respect that you could at any point, once you have 3 mana, drop a Forge Anew and bash them for 10. And with Embercleave, that is going to be lethal, most certainly. Nice deck. Love it. All right, this deck, another sort of very, very Ornithopter-heavy deck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 Ornithopters, even more than our last deck list. Anytime you see 17 Ornithopters plus Glimpse of Nature, Mox Opal, Aura Shards, it's not terribly difficult to see why this is a good deck. It's going to be able to draw a ton of cards with the Glimpse of Nature and would even arguably sort of mull somewhat aggressively to it. Galvanic Relay also playing a sort of Glimpse of Nature at home role. It is quite a bit worse, but it is here. Cards I'm really excited to see in this deck are Tempest Technique, a card I have no doubt is good here, but I'm glad to see it in a deck with a positive record. That's one of the new cards I added that I'm excited about. Excited to see Sheltered by Ghosts here. This is some interaction that I added recently that is not the most powerful option, certainly, but is sort of leading into the play patterns that I want interaction to lean into, so I'm excited to see that as well. In terms of win conditions, this deck has War Leader's Call, Shared Animosity, Tempest Technique, All That Glitters, Dowsing Dagger, First Day of Class. But most of those, any win conditions in the lands? No. Most of those are not premier options. Like, Tempest Technique is great, but Tempest Technique, Shared Animosity, Ward Leader's Call, none of those really pair, First Day of Class, don't really pair with All the Glitters. All the Glitters is a go big. There's no Trample I see anywhere. Anduril's a huge win condition. I don't know how I missed that one. That one's also extremely potent. So the premier ones here are really Tempest Technique, Anduril. Those are the two, I would say, are the premier win conditions. And then you can maybe get there with All the Glitters, Shared Animosity, War Leader's Call, First Day of Class, or some combination of those. But this deck appears, I would imagine, to have gone the distance with Glimpse of Nature and Aura Shards being sort of key pieces. Very little interaction here as well, I will say. So I had a goal sort of nerfing the all interaction control lists, and so far we have not seen a deck that was chock full of interaction performing very highly. So at least, anecdotally successful. I should say, too, none of this I'm treating as, like, statistically significant outcomes, right? This is just anecdotal from one event, a few drafts. So I'm just trying to learn sort of qualitative things I can from these deck lists to make sense of it. Yeah, Dowsing Device, cool to see in this list. That's also a relatively recent addition. I'm curious to know how that played for this player, given that they have so many other sort of more appealing win conditions. All right, next up, this list appears to be blue-black. Was splashing green, maybe just full Sultai, actually. Just didn't need any forests in their mana base because of all their non-basics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Ornithopters is about average, I would say. And here we start to see some control elements. So we've got Engineered Explosives, we've got Negate, we've got Seal of Primordium, we've got that's it. Echoing Truth is, a sort of interaction as well. So this is kind of a cool mid-range deck, I dare say. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got some premier card advantage with Glimpse of Nature, and I would say Plummet Forbidden is sort of just one tier below Glimpse of Nature. It is really strong in this cube. People are always surprised by how great it is. Its win conditions are Jaws of Defeat, Banner of Kinship, Bantu's Monument, Curse of Predation, Adaptive Omni Tool, and some protection for all the things it's doing with Yawgmoth's Will and Echoing Return. Yeah, a great little mid-range deck. I'm glad that decks like this can also succeed, right? Where this deck is not doing an obvious combo. It's not, really committed any one direction. It's kind of just playing a smattering of good cards, and I think here it's actually really important to get the balance of card advantage from things like Glimpse of Nature and Meeting of Minds, and Adaptive Omni Tool and Plumb the Forbidden, and interaction in the form of explosives and negate and Echoing Truth. Like, getting those balances right, I think, is actually kind of difficult, and so I'm glad players are rewarded for doing that. Good deck. Love to see it. This one, let's see here. We see 9 Ornithopters and some more sort of controlling elements here. This is a 2 Planeswalker list, 2 of the 3 available in the cube. Yeah, let's go see here. We got a lot of mana fixing too. So just 5 colors. Is there any white spells here? Yeah, we got War Leader's Call. So Blight Blue, but yeah, so full 5 colors. This is kind of a, like, I guess 5 color pile deck. It's also playing Ancient Tomb. I love to see that. And we have win conditions in the form of Adaptive Omni Tool, Curse of Predation, Shared Animosity, sometimes Mnemonic Betrayal that you can't really count on it, War Leader's Call, Vraska, Obelisk of Erd. A smattering of win conditions that are kind of maybe not super focused. We have interaction in the form of Repeal, Echoing Truth, Bile, Blight, Echoing Decay, Metallic Rebuke, Rebuild, Vraska again, and then some card advantage from Voyage Home. The Planeswalkers definitely provide card advantage in a substantial way. Adaptive Omni Tool. Yeah, it's kind of a funny Skull Clamp list. I'll say that about this. Usually in this cube, you see Skull Clamp paired with free sack outlets, of which there are quite a few, but there are none in this list. You do have the repeated sack outlet of Vraska, but only once per turn, and you have a couple of board wipes in Bile Blight and Echoing Decay, so you can at least draw 2 cards off your board wipe. So kind of a funny Skull Clamp list. A perfect example, if I saw this pool, I would have assumed this player was probably not playing the Skull Clamp main deck. Not to say it's wrong, I just probably would have assumed they probably weren't. And a sort of smattering of win conditions. Yeah, I think if we're talking, like, as a cube designer about how much I like these deck lists, this one's probably one that I feel less in love with. Like, compared to this, which is at least, like, limited in color and feels, I don't know, a little more, like, reasonable. Like, a lot of the cards that are at least sort of pointing to a same kind of tempo of game or a same sort of general plan. Here, it feels a little more scattered to me. Like, you want to go wide with cards like Shared Animosity and Curse of Predation, but you're only playing 9 Ornithopters, which is not that many. You have board reps and Planeswalkers, which is just a good control strategy, I guess, but in terms of being a control deck, you can't really reliably control the entire game. I don't know. This one doesn't spark as much joy for me, and is maybe the first example of something I would describe as, like, 5 color soupy, at least with a positive record. So, data for the data. All right, what we got here? Here we have a 2-1 Jeskai Ascendancy list, and it looks like this player actually probably either didn't know how the combo worked or didn't see a single 0-mana non-creature permanent after they knew they were doing the combo, because all this is missing to me is any 0-mana artifact that you can just play for free, which would then make your Jeskai Ascendancy go effectively infinite. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Ornithopters seems like a good number for this list. Good sort of interaction in the double forces, and again, both Banishing Knack and Retraction Helix, Mystical Tutor to go find them. The sort of plan B for this deck, instead of having more ways to untap, is to return all their Ornithopters with Paradoxical Outcome and then replay them again for Impact Tremors value. Maybe a little light on card advantage here, too. We did see the 3-0 list that had basically Ascendancy as its only source of card advantage, but Meeting of Minds, Paradoxical Outcome, I mean, those are 2 good ones. They're just kind of expensive. Thoughtcast. Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there's enough stuff going on here. This just seems like a, Jeskai Ascendancy combo list that maybe didn't quite get there. And again, 2-1, so the deck performed well by all measures, and, what is one draft worth of data? Again, very little we can take sort of as objective truth from that, but that's what I noticed when I see this list. It's just it's missing a way to turn the Jeskai Ascendancy Retraction Helix combo arbitrarily large. I mean, you can still do it a couple times. I mean, in this list, what's the cheapest? I guess you have nothing else here. It's kind of, you don't even have like a Springleaf Drum where you can do it for 1 mana each cycle or anything. Springleaf Drum is actually free because, yeah, no, Springleaf Drum is actually also effectively free because you play it for 1, but then it gives you a mana back if you have an Ornithopter to tap, and then the Ornithopter untaps, and you bounce a Springleaf Drum. Yeah, so that's another example. I think the other list we looked at had Springleaf Drum as well, so that was another redundancy for that 0 mana artifact. Wing Portent. I miss Wing Portent as a way to draw cards, which, with 12 Ornithopters, pretty good. 13 Ornithopters. Yeah. Here's a different looking list, which I'm glad to see here in the 2-1 bracket. We have Green-White, Rancor, Scale Up, Sheltered by Ghosts, All That Glitters, Naturalize, Rally of Wings, Disenchant, Cranial Plating, Graft. Yeah, this is just this is a sort of a very reasonable green-white proactive deck, and I think what green-white proactive decks gain here is the ability to play some really strong interaction in the form of Naturalize, Disenchant, and other sort of disenchant effects. Those are the 2 this deck happens to have. But this is just a good, solid bread and butter green-white aggro list. Now, sometimes these decks need ways to rebuy their stuff in the event of a board wipe. Like, what does this deck do if the board gets wiped? I think the answer is this deck does not overcommit to the board. I think you want to basically play one thing at a time, it seems like, and basically get in slowly. Most of your threats here are, aside from Banner of Kinship and Tempest Technique, and Obelisk of Word, I guess. Those 3 do ask you to go wide. The other ones, Scale Up, Rancor, Sheltered by Ghosts, All That Glitters. Andrew also rewards you for going wide, so does Rally of Wings. Yeah, interesting smattering here. I guess I feel like this deck could struggle against a couple board wipes in the main deck, but otherwise it has a good density of effects. Again, I'm glad to see Tempest Technique showing up in so many high-performing deck lists, and really glad to see Sheltered by Ghosts popping up in so many deck lists with positive records, too. Funny, Bow of Nylea here. I mean, just because this card is so known in this cube as being like a huge payoff for hard control decks, and that is definitely not what this deck is, but it also puts +1/+1 counters in your creatures. It just does everything. So, not the most efficient rate, but it does the job. Yeah. I love seeing, this is like kind of the level 1 deck list, right? Like, if you just sit down and draft 100 Ornithopters and you don't know any of the combos, you know, just want to make your Ornithopters big in attack, I maintain those deck lists can still be successful, and this is an example to that. A 2-1 deck list here that just says make guys big, play a couple disenchants, which, very viable strategy. Then we have a near mono red deck list, though it is splashing Thunder of Unity, and this is a great example of why I do like the Triomes here, although I guess it's not a great example because there's no fetch lands, and the Raphine's Tower you just got to draw. How hard is it for them to cast as Thunder of Unity? They have Red-White Duel in Legion Leadership, Rakdos Carnarium, Sunbaked Canyon, Raphine's Tower, Sacred Foundry. Seems pretty hard to cast to me. It's probably not a deck where I play Thunder of Unity. It's got 2 black sources in the whole deck, no way to find them. As in tutor them, I mean, it can find them just by drawing cards, it seems. We have Haze of Rage, but no real way to up that storm count aside from just Experimental Frenzy, playing a bunch of Ornithopters. Warhost Frenzy, I'm excited to see here. It's a card I think is potentially strong, but I would definitely want black mana for that in almost every situation. Honestly, another good level 1 deck list, I dare say. Just playing essentially, basically mono red aggro, splashing Thunder of Unity. And, you know, I think Warhost Frenzy is basically a gold card. Transmogran's Crown you really want gold for. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Ornithopters again. Yeah, a good level 1 deck list. Glad to see it. Would love to know how those games went. Back on the degenerate side of the spectrum, we have what appears immediately to be a combo deck. I see Ad Nauseam and Remembrance at the top of the curve. That usually does not point to anything fair going on. We also have Imperial Seal as a tutor, Diabolic Intent as a tutor, and it seems here the win condition is Blasting Station plus War Leader's Call, Impact Tremors, Echoing Return, Phyrexian Altar, and No Rest for the... So tons of ways to get back all their Ornithopters with Echoing Return, No Rest for the Wicked, and Remembrance essentially turns all of these sack outlets into an Ornithopter for... one trigger for every Ornithopter you have in your deck. It puts them all in the graveyard, right? Like you play Phyrexian Altar into Remembrance. Now every Ornithopter you sacrifice pulls an Ornithopter out of your deck. You get them all in the graveyard that way, make a bunch of mana, and then you just cast Echoing Return or No Rest for the Wicked, get them all back, and kill them with Impact Tremors at Blasting Station. Very cool. This deck showing off the Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek I just recently added, and this is a great example of a deck list that, before I added those cards, would really have almost no options for interaction. I mean, they could play some of the white interactive spells off the splash, but black struggles to interact with resolved artifacts and enchantments, and so those being the most important permanents to interact with in this cube, that poses a problem. But here, Thoughtseize and Inquisition, even though I was hesitant to add them because they are sort of less thematic compared to other sort of things the cube is doing, I think an important sort of depth to the black interactive suite here. This deck also has the potential to go very fast. You could definitely just, Culling the Weak ad nauseum on turn 2, maybe even Dark Ritual Culling the Weak ad nauseum on turn 1, and just draw your whole deck and win the next turn. Adnause decks are quite good here because, you can draw, this whole deck's curve, you cast the Adnause 4, 7, 10, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The whole sort of cost of that entire deck, if you drew your whole deck, is 27, which obviously you're going to start with some cards in your opening hand. So very often you'll get to draw everything you need to draw with Ad Nauseam to make this whole thing just kill your opponent. Double Tutor also really good here too. So good deck. Love to see it. All right, what we got here? Let's see. Some great lands. I see Academy and Gaia's Cradle, so this deck can make a ton of mana. What is it doing with that mana? It is playing 12 Ornithopters as well, and then Meeting of Minds, Voyage Home, Song of Creation. Well, this deck can also just cast the Great Henge. Yeah, this deck is not playing any way to cheat the equip cost of Belt of Giant Strength. It's just playing Academy and Gaia's Cradle to possibly just pay for it, which I really like. I want that to be a backdoor sort of way to make Belt of Giant Strength playable. I don't want it to just be a Sigardas Aid card. I see Echoing Boon and Berserk over here. The deck builder paired it to show that Berserk is the only thing that Echoing Boon cares about. Again, don't know how highly this drafter got the Echoing Boon, because either they got it late, it wasn't being respected, or they got it late and were respecting it despite only having one thing to trigger with it, or they took it early and then didn't see other cards to pair with it. But it only takes one card or a couple cards to make Echoing Boon good. Also, basically just card casting the Great Henge here. No way to cheat it into play, just paying all that mana. You could, I guess, boost something's power with Belt of Giant Strength, then play the Great Henge for just 2 mana. Love Prophetic Memory. Win conditions here are Belt, All the Glitters, Prophetic Memory, Bone Sabers, Shared Animosity. I'm so glad to see Shared Animosity showing up somewhat highly in a lot of these deck lists too, because I had a couple players tell me the last time I drafted this with a group that they thought it was a bit of a trap. It was so hard to go that wide, but I think it is very viable here, and excited to see that. Another positive record for Song of Creation as well. So yeah, mono busted lands and big spells. I'll take it. Metallic Rebuke is the sort of soul form of it. I guess they can use a lot of mana also to sort of level up Innkeeper's Talent a bunch, which can be very good. This is Gwen Decker's list. I know from the playmat and from talking to him at the Cube event, and it is 2-1, and it is the closest I think I saw all weekend to a hard control list. Gwen's only paying 5 Ornithopters. He's got Engineered Explosives, Inquisition of Cosmic, Dispeller's Capsule, Steel Sabotage, Annul, Balance, Negate, Echoing Ruin, Bile-Blight, Force of Negation, Vindicate, Force of Will. That's a ton of interaction, especially relative to how much we've seen in these other deck lists. I dare say that Gwen probably has heard of the sort of Bones, hard control list, and perhaps was going in trying to force that, or at least found a way into that early, and went 2-1, so the deck definitely worked, but it was not unstoppable. Gwen also told me specifically that I think his only win condition here is really Mnemonic Betrayal to steal his opponent's win conditions. Right? What else? How else can Gwen win the game? We have Adaptive Omni Tool, Dowsing Device, both fine, but really below rate win conditions on their own. So yeah, that's it. Either one of those two, or stealing his opponent's win conditions with Demonic Betrayal, which is I think what he did most of the games, which I think I feel fine about. I think I could be cool. Yeah. So I think it's a great example of I want this deck to work, but I want it to be really hard work. And the fact that Gwen is playing Adaptive Omni Tool here in a deck with 5 Ornithopters, really not the win condition you want to be playing. Same for Dowsing Device. These are cards you really don't want to play in a deck like this, frankly. Eviscerator's Insight also among its worst, because it only draws cards if you have creatures or artifacts to sacrifice, and Gwen has very few, so that won't do its job some of the time. Duretti also really not doing a lot here. You're not getting any powerful artifacts back. I mean, honestly, maybe you're getting back like a Dispeller's Capsule or Engineering Explosives in exchange for one of your Ornithopters, but that's not a mana-efficient exchange, so that's really just kind of looting every turn, which is not a thing this deck is necessarily inherently interested in doing. So Gwen has had to cobble this together and made it work to a 2-1, which that's what I want this deck to feel like, is if you really want to do it, you can be fighting uphill the whole time, and I get the sense that is how this felt for Gwen, so that's that. On to decks with a losing record. 1-2. Here we see a green-white deck. This is a bummer to see this here in the 1-2 bracket, and again, I'm not taking any of this as like, hard evidence that these cards are underpowered per se, but we see the Sigardas Aid, Belt of Giant Strength package here, along with Heirloom Blade and all the auras, Stormbeacon Blade. All the auras work with Sigardas Aid too, which people forget about. You can flash in a Rancor, you can flash in a, I guess, Curse of Predation, honestly, right? Yeah, that's an aura spell. You can flash, not that you ever want to flash it in. Strength of the Harvest is a much better example of flashing that in. The real thing of note here is that here we see the first appearance of either of the Monarch cards. Court of Garenbrig is here in the 1-2 bracket. Obviously, this does not speak to this card being underpowered. I still think this card is probably pretty nuts here. It could be variance. It could be bad luck. Could be that this was not the best sort of shell for it. I mean, the deck seems pretty good to me. Like, comparing this to the other green-white deck we saw, they seem pretty equivalent. We have Naturalize and Conclave Tribunal and Requisition Raid as interaction. This card you can barely see the bit of here is Bone Sabers. I can recognize the card frame. You got a lot of threats. You got tutors to find the most important things in your deck. You've got Trample. You've got Go Big, Go Wide. You've got it all. Yeah, maybe card advantage is a little lacking here. We do have the Court of Garenbrig. We do have the Heirloom Blade. We do have Rite of Harmony. Maybe a tiny bit lacking. Maybe you want one more way to draw cards, but honestly, this feels to me like this deck should be about as good as the other green-white deck we saw in the 2-1 bracket, and honestly might have been. It might be a better deck. You never know. Games always break differently, but the fact that the whole weekend we saw no courts in the 3-0 or even 2-1 bracket is really interesting to me. So here's the first appearance of that. This deck list is green, blue, red, so teamer, full teamer. We see Song of Creation here. This is where, frankly, I expect to see Song of Creation most of the time in the sort of 1-2 bracket or worse, just because people have struggled to make it really work. This deck may be a little unfocused. So let's say you draw your whole deck with Song of Creation. What do? You put all your Ornithopters in play. You then pass the turn and hope to untap with enough mana to kill them with Biomass Mutation? I guess. I mean, you do have 3 Tree City and Gaia's Cradle to dump mana into that Biomass Mutation. You do have Kessig Wolf Run as a sort of redundant or sort of a very reliable win condition. I guess this is maybe, I was going to say it for a second, it was almost an attempt at a control deck. Like Kessig Wolf Run, great example of a honestly fantastic control win condition in this cube. And we see Engineer Explosives, Bow of Nylea, Seal of Primordium, good control cards. Echoing Truth can buy a lot of time. But then that same deck was playing Cavalcade of Calamity, Chiron Negotiations with no way to untap. You're just doing that manually, turn over turn. Yeah, I think this deck is a little bit all over the place. Again, no offense if you're the drafter here, but I can see where this is in the 1-2 bracket. And yeah, I don't think it speaks to necessarily any of the cards contained within, and from a cube design perspective per se. Here we see another sort of heavy black combo deck. We saw one of these in the 2-1 bracket. This one has more blue going on here for Flusterstorm Negate, Metallic Rebuke, Paradoxical Outcome. And the combo here is Blasting Station, Meathook Massacre. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it also has a pretty fair line with Door of Destinies or Banner of Kinship as a win condition. But you've got Echoing Return to get back all your Ornithopters, play them all again. That's good with Blasting Station. You've got ways to protect things. You've got tutors. Beseech the Mirror, Demonic Tutor, good. Thrumming Stone. Yeah, I think this is funny. This is like, I feel like this deck really wanted a way to win without passing the turn, and also wanted the kind of massive card advantage that comes from Ad Nauseam. Like, throw an Ad Nauseam in this deck and replace Thrumming Stone, Banner, and Door with just any free sack outlet. And I think this is looking pretty good. I mean, Blasting Station's kind of a free sack outlet, but you have to obviously have the Ornithopters in hand, not already in play by the time you cast it for that to work. So, yeah, I mean, otherwise I think it's a fine deck list. I don't think this is a mess per se. Maybe a little light of win conditions. I mean, you do need Blasting Station, Meathook Massacre, or Banner or Door to stick. Banner or Door specifically requiring you to pass the turn, I think, is a little extra rough. Blasting Station and Meathook Massacre being able to kill you right away is what you really want to be doing, I think, in a deck like this. Kind of a funny Sensei's Divining Top, I will say. All right, CD, come on. Come on in, baby. Come in. Messing up Daddy's video again. Kind of a funny Sensei's Divining Top. I usually expect and want to see that card in decks that are manipulating the top of their library. So here it's just being played for value, which some people have said that Sensei's Top doesn't belong in this cube. I hear you, Bones. And I see the argument. It is very generically powerful. It doesn't have anything to do with Ornithopters on its face. I like it because there are so many ways to play cards off the top of the library here. I think there's like 4-ish. So I like it for that reason. I think it's really good with those cards, obviously. And when people play it like this, then I can see the sort of argument from Bones that maybe it doesn't belong here. That feels a little more true to me. This one. Black, red, green. Looks like a sack combo deck, but with only one way to get all your stuff back with no rest for the wicked. So here we see the first appearance of Pia's Revolution. This is a card I think is actually excellent in this cube. Really, really strong. It turns any of your sack outlets into a bolt for your opponent, or they have to give you just another proc of your sack outlet. And what that means almost all the time is that they mostly can't afford to do it. Sometimes with like Ashnod's Altar, they'll be like, all right, I guess make as much mana as you want. Let's see if you can do anything with it. And there you might get them with a Draconic Destiny or something. But usually they have to just take 3 every time you sacrifice an Ornithopter, especially if you have something like Goblin Bombardment, or you have Meathook Massacre in play, or you have an Impact Tremors, then it's like you're just dead. Everyone's going to deal damage to you, so you just have to take 3 off of all of them now. Really good way to turn a deck without that many Ornithopters into having a really sort of strong win condition. So I guess I said it looks like a sack combo deck, but Ashnod's Altar is the only sacrifice outlet, and No Rest for the Wicked is the only way to get everything back. And then it's also playing Rancor and Fists of Flame and Cavalcade of Calamity and Transmogrants. Well, Transmogrants card actually works here. It's good with the sack outlet. Cranial Plating is a card that's kind of out of place here. So I think this deck is a little bit sort of a little bit unfocused, and also a ton of Ornithopters. We have 14 Ornithopters. Usually I think these decks want to play a few fewer because they can afford to with Pia's Revolution. So yeah, Shared Animosity. Like a weird mix of like I'm doing sack synergy combo things and I am doing attack you things. And here we see Echoing Boon in the losers bracket. And here it works with Fists of Flame and nothing else. Yeah, so it can go wrong too. It's not always going to be great. This deck list. All right. Similar Jun Situation. This one also has a Blood Bond March. It's not the same player right now, different playmats. This one also has Blood Bond March, which is a sort of combo card. The first time we're seeing that in this particular round of decks is in the loser's bracket, but sometimes that deck is very potent. This one has the Blood Bond March. The only win condition I see off the bat appears to be Jaws of Defeat. So you are relying on that Jaws of Defeat sticking, and then you can Blood Bond March, sacrifice an Ornithopter to... Yeah, also no repeated sack outlets. Yikes. Yeah. You got one-off sack outlets in Eviscerator's Insight in last-ditch effort, but then no way to do it repeatedly. Yeah, this deck's missing a couple pieces, I would say. The sort of Blood Bond March, Jaws of Defeat thing definitely can work, but you want some free sack outlets so that you can turn every Ornithopter you cast into every Ornithopter in your graveyard a couple times and just win the game that way. And again, sort of Cavalcade Calamity, Bitter Reunion, Sensei's Divining Top here, feeling a little out of place. So, a little all over the place, I would say. Here, yeah, it looks like the sack decks just kind of didn't have as much success this weekend. And again, I've seen weekends where they are some of the best decks at the tables and are the ones that are populating a 3-0 bracket instead of all these Jeskai Ascendancy decks. So, evolving meta, variants, could be a lot of things. This is another Adnause deck. It's a Throwing Stone deck. 14 Ornithopter deck. We do have Calling Week and Organ Harvest to ramp out that Adnause. And then the win conditions for this deck are Warhost Frenzy, Goblin Bombardment. That is it. And this deck also has no way to protect the Goblin Bombardment, so a Disenchant's going to be really hard for this deck to beat. No way to get it back either. Once you disenchant your Goblin Bombardment, you are all in on casting Warhost Frenzy and having enough creatures in play already to kill them. Yeah. Some of the engine pieces are there, like the ramp is there. The way to get back your stuff you're sacrificing is there. Like, that's all cool. I think, like, this deck would have loved Pia's Revolution. That would have been incredible in this deck. I guess Chainsaw is a really sort of out there potential win condition here. Though you really want another free stack outlet other than Goblin Bombardment, because if you've got Goblin Bombardment, you're killing with Goblin Bombardment. You're not going to need another. You're not going to need something else. But if you have Chainsaw and no Bombardment, you need some other free stack outlet to actually do that one at a time. Because Chainsaw is when you sacrifice one or more. So if you cast like Organ Harvest and sacrifice your board, you're only getting one trigger. So you really want something to be able to sacrifice one at a time to get those counters on the Chainsaw. Missing a couple things. Sultai list here. All right, we see Glimpse of Nature. That's a good card. We see Yawgmoth's Demonic Tutor. These are good cards. So what's the win condition here? We have Bantu's Monument. We have Croson Adaptation. We have Proph's Eidetic Memory. And we have stealing your opponent's win conditions with Mnemonic Betrayal. Kind of thin on the ground in terms of ways to win the game, both in terms of density and also reliability. Like, it's not like you can draw your whole deck and then... If you draw your whole deck, you can probably get them with Bantu's Monument, Hurkyl's Recall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, exactly 10 Ornithopters. So I guess they're saying if I have no Ornithopters in play, draw my whole deck, which I would have to do with Glimpse of Nature with this list, which means I would have to be playing my Ornithopters as I'm drawing my whole deck, then play the Bantu's Monument at some point along the way. Then I would have to like have all my Ornithopters die. Maybe I kill them with Bile Blight, and then, or I sacrifice them to Village Rites, Eviscerator's Insight, get them back with Yawgmoth's Will. Maybe kill them that way. Yeah, I think the wing additions either need to be better or more numerous in this deck list for this to work. Or you need many more control elements to rely on something like Mnemonic Betrayal as hopefully stealing a win condition from your opponent. And we're mostly seeing, honestly, Sensei's Tops here that are played. Though I like Sensei's Top with Proph's Eidetic Memory too. I think that's kind of cool. But mostly we're seeing Sensei's Tops played without cards that play off the top of your library, which is not my favorite. Here we've got a red-white aggro deck. Curse, Storm Mage's Rescue, Sheltered by Ghosts, a Remembrance here, a Pia's Revolution. Pia's Revolution with no sack outlets should definitely be setting off alarm bells. You don't want to play this just as a way to like discourage your opponent from wiping the board. They'll just wipe the board and they'll take some damage. It's fine. We have Galvanic Relay for card advantage and Remembrance for a kind of card advantage. But again, a Pia's Revolution, Remembrance, and no sack outlet is really not where you want to be. So I think this deck, yeah, has a couple pieces that are out of place. It's not a Pia's Revolution deck, not a Remembrance deck. And if you're not either of those things, then you need to have a lot more other ways to kill your opponent, just fair ways to kill your opponent, and probably many fewer Ornithopters at that point. If you were a combo deck with Pia's Revolution and Remembrance, then you could play this density of Ornithopters and make it work, but you would need ways to actually kill your opponent with that combo. Free sack outlets of some sort. And here we have 4-color. No green, I guess. Yeah, no green. Yeah, 4-color. 4-color greenless. Goblin Bombardment, Impact Tremors, Haze of Rage, Biomass Mutation, Second Sunrise, Face Reward. So here we see Second Sunrise, Face Reward, and the only sack outlet is the Goblin Bombardment, which obviously if you can pull that off, that's great. We see Impact Tremors, Jaws of Defeat, with Retract and Rebuild. So really kind of a couple decks mushed together here. I think dedicated sack decks can be really good. I think dedicated replay all your Ornithopters decks with Impact Tremors effects can be really good. And then dedicated Storm decks can be really good. Like the Tempest Technique is probably fine here, but not at its best. Lacking card advantage, I will say. Really no ways to draw cards here. So I imagine this deck probably got caught top decking quite a bit and was hoping to draw something that really affected the board. Out of place Rally of Wings, I dare say. I'm also not sure I'm playing Expedition Map just to go get 3 Tree City or Mana Fixing. That feels pretty bad. Yeah, also a little bit unfocused, as you might expect for the decks that have a losing record. This one was 1-1 and then ran out of time at the end of the day. I should have put this before the 1 and 2 decks, because this one ostensibly performed better. I saw a couple of his players' games, and it gave me hope for the Sigardas Aid package. We have Sigardas Aid, we have Belt of Giant Strength, we have Forge Anew, we have Colossus Hammer. So really that's like the whole thing. They also had Quest for the Holy Relic, which I wish I could find them and talk to them, and Hammer and Razan. They had the whole package in terms of equipping stuff for free. And I don't know how they would have fared in their third match. For my part, I think this deck probably wants a few fewer Ornithopters and a little bit of interaction, and if you can swing it, more card draw, like, swapping a couple Ornithopters here for like Storm Beacon Blade or Adaptive Omni Tool or, something like that would be obviously fantastic. Trample will be great here. There's no trample on any of these cards, and you can make a huge Ornithopter, but they might be able to just block it, in which case you want to be gaining life with Sheltered by Ghosts or have Forge Anew in play to make the chump blocks hard. I did see them do the Forge Anew thing in one game where they had enough Ornithopters to attack their opponent that they couldn't block all of them, and then when they didn't block was like, well, now that one's a 10-10 because of Colossus Hammer. And that was cool to see. We got Welding Jar to protect targeted Ornithopters. So yeah, this gives me hope for this package, but it went 1-1 in this particular event. I'd love to see how that third match would have played out. I imagine that was the time they ran out of time. Yeah, that was Saturday evening where they ran out of time in the venue, unfortunately. I only got one person that uploaded an 0-3 deck list. I think a lot of players wait till after the draft to upload the deck list, and maybe if your draft didn't go that well, you don't feel particularly like uploading your deck list. But here we see double Court of Garenbrig, Court of Ardenvale. So these are the three. We've seen 3 instances of either of these cards: 2 Court of Garenbrigs, 1 Court of Ardenvale in any of these deck lists, and they were all losing records. So interesting. I mean, that's really honestly just a good opportunity to make the point that the record is not an indication of the card's power level, because these cards, I believe, remain extremely powerful. So got those showing up here. This is a green-white deck with a pretty dense set of win conditions, though some funny ones. Court of Garenbrig, I think, is the premier win condition. Just make your team huge. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. There's actually very few win conditions for what you would expect to see from a green-white deck here. We have Transmogren's Crown, Cranial Plating. Crown being a really sort of thin win condition. It's really not a win condition. It helps, but Cranial Plating is a win condition. Blasting Station is a win condition, but out of place here. You don't want to be sacrificing your Ornithopters for this deck. You want to be playing them to the board. Garenbrig is a really good win condition. Collective Effort kind of does the job, and that's it. Gavany Township is hiding over here as sort of an inevitability. But yeah, so like the Fecundity and Blasting Station and Second Sunrise and Savin's Reclamation to a lesser degree kind of speak to a Sacrifice, Remembrance especially. Those cards really speak to a like sacrifice deck, which I don't think the rest of this pool is speaking to. The balance, you could arguably main deck this, and if you're on the draw, maybe get some people sometimes, but I think you're a deck that largely wants to be on board for the most part. So yeah, a funny combination of cards here that I think is probably not the best sort of showcase for what the courts are capable of. This video's taking so much longer than I thought. I can yap about Cube forever. Let's talk about these changes. So I'm making very few changes, and honestly, they don't have anything really directly to do with the outcome of Boston Cube Party, save for one sort of minor exception. So first, I got to shout out user Minox, who is always commenting on my cubes on Cube Cobra. You should get in the Discord if you're not already Minox, because we love to talk to you about Cube all day. They had a great suggestion for Windbrisk heights for this cube, and this I have not been so happy to add a card to a cube in a long time. This is perfect here in every single way. For those who don't know, this is the white hideaway card, so it's like Shell Rock Isle, but the white one, and the condition for flipping it is that you have to attack with 3 or more creatures, which this is so radically recontextualized here because you can do this on turn 2, like, very plausibly. You can opening hand with Windbrisk Heights, another white source, and 3 Ornithopters. You can even draw the second white source on your second turn if you want. You play the Windbrisk Heights, tuck something, play 3 Ornithopters on turn 1. Turn 2, you swing, deal no damage, but then you flip the Windbrisk Heights. Or you swing and, while you're still attacking, flip the Windbrisk Heights into, Obelisk of Erd or Assault Formation or something, and you do deal damage. Who's to say? So it's really cool that this card is, like, potentially massively powered up here. It also requires you to play Ornithopters to the board. There's this really cool tension in this cube between holding onto your Ornithopters and playing them out. I love that tension, but I will say that most of the cards that are the really big payoffs are going to reward you for holding them. Like your Glimpse of Natures, your Aura Shards, all your Storm cards, all that stuff is paying you off for holding them until later. And so the more incentives I can introduce to playing them early, the better. I'm happy to keep adding more cards like that. It's also just a cool card in white because white is the color that has maybe lacked the most identity here. I'm really excited by Tempest Technique from the latest Commander product. That's, I think, actually helped quite a bit. The equipment theme is there, but I think is underperformed, and so, that's kind of tough to be your identity if it's an underperforming deck. So it's a cool thing for white to be doing. And like the cheating mana thing is cool. Like I think when people think about Shelldock Isle, the main thing they think about is like cheating mana. That's cool. I'm down for that. This is definitely the kind of environment where, your opponent might just play 5 Ornithopters, Gaia's Cradle. And so it's totally fair for you to cheat mana. Cheating mana is like above board here, completely reasonable. But I'm actually just more excited that it's a land that draws a card. You play your land, and then at some point in the game, that land will be worth a card that you had some selection for. So the best card from the top 4 in your library the moment you played it. It's just going to keep games flowing. And it's also just a beautiful old card. I got a Lorwyn foil. I'm so excited. It's sitting right here. Where did it go? It's sitting somewhere. I already put it in the cube. I don't know where it is, but it's beautiful. Trust me. So, Minox, thank you for that. Huge shout out. I can't believe that I'm like over a year into designing this cube, and I'm still finding cards that are like, I wrote here, forehead slappingly obvious, and just so cool. This card's awesome, and should have been in this list in the beginning. Collector's Cage is kind of similar. It's also a hideaway card. It also cares about having creatures in play. I think it's a lot less of a slam dunk. I'm excited to test it. But what this does is basically Hideaway 5 instead of 4, so you get a little more selection on it. And it has a sort of the Ozolith effect, not the original Ozolith, but the Ozolith Shattered Spire effect, where you can tap to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It's just 1, so the rate of 1 mana a turn for 1 counter on 1 creature is not the best rate, though I will say that sometimes you end up in a board stall here, and this will win eventually in a board stall, so it's something to do with your mana at least. And then you can play that card you cheated under it if you have 3 creatures with different powers when that ability resolves. So that you can do at instant speed. You can override timing restrictions, which is kind of cool. And yeah, this is like a role player. It like fits into the +1/+1 counter theme. It's fine in a board stall. And then maybe it's not that hard to draw a card off of it. I'm not actually sure how hard it's going to be to satisfy that condition. We're going to find out. A lot of the stuff symmetrically pumps your team. Like your Tempest Technique is not going to help you with this. Your Tempered Steel is not going to help you with this. Your Obelisk Avert, all these things are just going to pump your whole team symmetrically. So you would want to be playing this in a deck, ideally, I think, with other ways to make your creatures have power that is different. So you'd want your regular aura and equipment deck is really probably where this is at its best. So we'll see how this plays out. Yeah. I'm also adding Battlefield Improvisation. I'm just really going deep on this sort of cheating equipment deck to see how, like, if I can over-support it and just see how it feels, then I feel like I'll have a better sense of what to cut. So I'm adding this alongside the other things that are in there. I am cutting Quest for the Holy Relic to make space for it. I think this card is just probably not quite the right fit here. It asks you to do 2 things that are pretty contrary. To play enough Ornithopters to trigger this 5 times is asking quite a bit. I think the decks that have this sort of equipment theme usually want around 10 Ornithopters, so you have to have drawn half your deck and already have this in play. Or if you draw half your deck and then you draw this, it doesn't help you. So for this to work, everything kind of has to line up, and then you also have to have a lot of creatures and also care about the equipment theme, which is, again, I think those decks don't want that many creatures all the time. So that's getting cut for Battlefield Improvisation, which was a new card to me because I don't pay that much attention to Universe's Beyond product, but just a one-shot, +2/+2, and attach equipment to something, which is similar to the Forge Anew effect that I saw that player of that deck I just talked about take advantage of, that I actually see some players miss sometimes. Or, like, this card, Forge Anew, has a lot of text on it, and I think some of the most important text is that you can activate abilities at instant speed as long as it is your turn, which is a funny way to say it, right? It's instant speed, but you can't do it on your opponent's turn. You can't do it defensively. You have to do it basically after you block, or after you attack rather, and your opponent declares blocks. Then you can move stuff to unblocked Ornithopters. This has the same effect. I'm curious to know how this will be with a bunch of less impactful equipment rather than saying just having Colossus Hammer. Like if you have 3 middling equipments, is this still okay to like move them all to one thing to get one big alpha strike in? I'm not sure. But I think this much more clearly sends the message like, do this thing. Attack with a bunch. Whatever one's unblocked gets all the stuff, which people do miss on Forge Anew sometimes. So I'm going to try that out. Little side grade here, I think an upgrade. I had Brilliant Restoration for all the reasons I talked about, and I'm switching it to Redress Fate, which is the exact same card, except it costs 1 more mana, but with 2 fewer white commitments, and has Miracle for 3 and a white. There are a lot of ways to set up Miracle here. We have Mystical Tutor, Imperial Seal, Vampiric Tutor, and of course, Sensei's Divining Top, which we talked about a little bit before. So plenty of ways to just like set this up and make it a 4-mana return everything, regardless of what turn was put into the graveyard. So it's not quite the same as Face Reward or Second Sunrise because it can have died whenever. And then honestly, even without the Miracle cost, I think there's a good argument for the fact that 6 white is an easier mana cost here than 3 white. Because a lot of the ways you make a lot of mana are Ashnod's Altar, Kark Clan Ironworks, Organ Harvest, ways to make, or, Gaia's Cradle Tolarian Academy. Like, you can make a lot of mana, but can you make a lot of white mana is the sort of bigger question. And I think this will actually maybe be easier to cast on the front side fairly as well. So will people be frustrated by the Miracle mechanic? I guess we'll see. Time to find out. Last edition here is Castle Lochthwain. I think it was Minas Tirith or something. There was a more recent card that was spoiled, or maybe it was the red utility land that could exile cards from the top of your library. You could play until end of turn for activated ability. There was some land that was spoiled, but people were talking about it for this cube, but they were like, oh, it seems nice to have your land be able to draw cards. And I think it was... what are you going? See, Torchical Snow Monster, Snowster. You've changed your name so many times. Tentacle Monster is your original username. I believe it was you that was like, well, if we're going to play that card, why not just Castle Lochthwain? And I was like, yeah, why not just Castle Lochthwain? This seems great. Getting Hellbent and being top decking is a thing that happens in this environment. It's just a byproduct of having a bunch of 0-mana 0/2s in your deck along with your lands. So this really helps you in that spot. And yeah, pretty low cost of inclusion. Pretty easy to drop in your deck as long as you have some swamps. Even if you don't, honestly, but you will have some swamps because you're going to be paying 1 black to activate this thing. So pretty free to include in your deck and might just get you out of some pinches if you are out of cards. Quick, addressing the cuts. Trash the Town and Appeal to Authority. Trash the Town was recently re-added. It was in the cube, then it was out of the cube, then it was back in the cube, and now it's back out of the cube. Look, I don't know. I don't know if it belongs here. It has a couple things that are really... that I really love about it. And the main things I really love are that it is card advantage that requires you to have board presence and attack with Ornithopters, and that it is a trample outlet. Having sources of trample is really important, incidentally, through a lot of combo decks. So I love those two things about it. What I really hate about it is that it feels like a plant for Echoing Boon. I don't know how often this ends up in the pool of a player that doesn't have Echoing Boon. With Echoing Boon, it's kind of messed up. Without it, players might look at it and think it's not that great. And so I'm cutting it as a plan for Echoing Boon. I love the Echoing Boon decks. We just talked about how I like all of them, even the 3 that were of the 3 of the 4 3-0 deck lists we saw. But I want people to have to think and not just wheel, great cards for their deck because other players don't rate them very highly. Same goes for Appeal to Authority. First of all, the Authority side basically never matters. This is just a sorcery speed. End of turn, target creature gets +S/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. So the trample here is also nice. This is honestly a very similar card. The trample's nice, and this is really, really good with Echoing Boon and fine without it. So I'm just getting it out of here because I'm trying to have fewer cards that look like plants for Echoing Boon. And then I just added Eviscerator's Insight, and the reasons I added it I think still stand. I think it is very solid here. We saw it in some deck lists I think that it makes a lot of sense in, but I just need more space to test some more stuff, and Eviscerator's Insight is a card I think is a known quantity. So if I find cards I don't like in the cube in the future, I could see Insight coming right back in. But for right now, it's like, yeah, you're just a less than a Plum of the Forbidden or a less than a Village Rites, so let's just get you out of here for now to make more room to test more stuff. Wow, I talked for over an hour. That is not what I planned to do. I planned to talk for like 20 minutes. That's shocking. Anyway, that's the updates, 100 Ornithopters, and a much too lengthy review, frankly, of all the deck lists from Boston Cube Party. Again, thanks again if you uploaded your deck list to Hadrian Network so I could talk about it here today. I apologize again if I said something unbecoming of your deck list. Please don't take it personally, and please trust you are a better Magic player than me. And yeah, stay tuned for more updates to the Cube.